Welcome to the Social Ninjas podcast. I am your co-host, Kyle. Join with me as always, the other co-host, Jeremy. What is up, man?
What's up, Kyle? Hello, all the listeners listening. Glad you're listening. Thank you.
We're all saying hello. We also do have a very special guest with us today, Peter Taunton. What's going on, Peter?
Hey guys, I'm just here down in Miami, and I've been looking forward to this podcast, and happy to give you some real and raw content today.
Awesome. That's what we love. So can you give us a little background on yourself? Kind of tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, how far back do you want me to go?
Let's start now. Kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself for people who aren't familiar with you.
Just a 1 minute elevator background on myself. I grew up youngest of 7 kids, fairly practical life, Midwestern town, middle class. I had an opportunity at a young age to try to turn around a failing health club. I was successful in doing that. I stayed in the health and wellness space for most of my life, 35 years. I just stepped down about 18 months ago as the CEO of a brand that I founded. And I built an amazing brand of wellness centers. I've got like 6,000 locations in 28 countries. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of road rash between that kid in the 2-room schoolhouse to where I am today here in Miami. But the narrative is that anything is possible. It's overcoming adversity. It's, a positive mindset, a lot of grit, a lot of discipline. But I've appreciated every learning experience along the way. I just happen to have experienced some amazing success. So what brings me today to these type of podcasts is to really share an honest and open narrative on what it's like to start from nothing and build an empire. What does that feel like? And how can you do it without losing yourself along the way? I mean, and that's what I feel. That's my real takeaway, because there's a lot of people that they completely lose themselves in that process, and I just try to keep it real and authentic. And I don't get me wrong, I'm very appreciative, and hard work works, but losing your soul in the process is the non-negotiable for me.
So I'm just going to ask right away, building, that empire and not losing yourself. Like, what is that process like? What does it feel like? And how do you not lose yourself along the way?
Well, I think that some people, and, the honest answer is when you're building something that is pretty amazing. And I'm biased, of course, but I thought it was pretty amazing to grow up youngest of 7, start in a 2-room schoolhouse. I quit college my junior year. And I just never quit on my dream. So that in itself, and then actually being able to have a front row seat to your dream is a pretty amazing story, life story. I've also had the experience of meeting a lot of very, very successful people along the way. Sometimes when you're successful and you're fighting, you're walking your journey, things happen for you that are probably, maybe it's fair or unfair, but the reality of it is people are generally pretty kind to you. You don't wait in restaurants. You get great seats at concerts. And sometimes it's easy for people to fall into that lifestyle to where they think it's deserved. And the reality of it is it's not so much you as the person as it is the position that you hold. And when you step away from that stuff, sometimes I think that people kind of lose themselves in the process of stepping away and then kind of reinventing themselves. And to me, it was never that. That was never me. That was never. I appreciated all those things, but I always tell people, look, don't ever be so proud of everything that you've done that you're too proud to drink out of a styrofoam cup, right? That you can just always kind of remain grounded and always just be true to yourself. True to yourself in my lens looks like you're compassionate to others. You have empathy. You're passionate about life, but you fight for the underdog. You help where you can, and you're not any more or less than who you are, if that makes sense. I always say, hey, look, I am who I am. I'm nothing more. I'm nothing less. And you know, I sleep like a baby at night, and I try to get up and really live an intentional life. I really, truly try to do that every day.
So you talk about trying to live an intentional life. So do you practice any sort of morning routines or anything like
Yeah,
that?
I do. I mean, a couple of things that I do. I mean, before I go to bed at night, and the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, I like to think about. I think gratitude. So when I'm going to bed at night, I reflect on the day, and it's not like I sit there and meditate on this for 10 minutes. I think about what was my day like, how productive was my day, and what am I thankful for, and then outside of my day, what am I thankful for? Am I thankful for my health? I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for whatever the experience was for that day, good or bad, because life isn't always kittens, balloons, and butterflies, right? I mean, at some point in time, we all experience adversity, and that's just life as well. So I'm always thankful for those things. And when I have adversity in my life, like we all do, I try to find something positive that's going to come out of it. And if the only thing positive out of it was, wow, that was a horrible experience, I don't ever want to do that again. Look, that's reflection and that's perspective. Conversely, when I wake up in the morning, same thing. I think about what I'm grateful for in my life. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about the things that I have at that moment, not what's going to come, but just what I'm experiencing in that moment. So normally in the morning, the things that I'm thankful for the beautiful life that I have as a narrative. My life overall, the good and the bad, I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the friends. I'm thankful for my kids and my family. So the morning thankfulness is really a broader brush of the overall life that I've experienced. Whereas at night when I go to bed, I'm thinking more so of the experience that I might have had just recently.
Well,
But I think it's a great way to start. I think a great way to start your day is through the lens of appreciation, personally.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm just going to ask, what is like the biggest adversity you have overcome, and how did you get over it? And what are some of your biggest takeaways from that experience?
Biggest adversity, or you know what? I think the biggest adversity is self-inflicted for me. Okay, self-inflicted about being a perfectionist, and I'm the hardest on myself, which most of us are, right? So I think that's the biggest adversity for me is just to accept that. Hey, look, Peter, you don't have to be perfect, and honestly, Peter, if you try to be perfect, it puts so much undue pressure on yourself. And I used to find that all the time in public speaking, that when I would public speak, I would get so unbelievably nervous, like just like complete anxiety, panic attack-ish, right? And it was coming from this feeling of I've got to give the I have a dream speech. You know what I mean? That it's just got to be this perfect narrative. And then I took it from a different perspective, which helped me immensely, taking it from the perspective of, look, I'm the least most important person in the room, and I'm really here just to share my life experiences with you in hopes that you can take some nuggets of gold through my life experiences, especially the gold of the trials and tribulations, the hardships, and so you can navigate better as you might experience some of those things in your life. So for me, you know, the biggest adversity was just literally trying to let go of the fact that I've got to be perfect. And sometimes, once again, it's self-inflicted. But when you've accomplished a lot financially in your life, people put you on this pedestal of, wow, you got to be this amazing, perfect and person. And that in itself is that can be a big load to carry sometimes.
So you you said you get nervous and anxious, or you used to. Is this like kind of like within the past few years, or is this something when you first started speaking you started feeling, or is this something you
Oh,
still sometimes feel?
sometimes I can feel it, but I have some exercises that I go through in my head that tend to alleviate it, because let's be honest. It's just an emotion that's coming through. It's a thought that takes place in your head. There's no truth to it. Okay. Nobody puts that kind of, nobody in the crowd would generally take that position of, oh, this guy is, put that kind of pressure on yourself. It's really, people just want you to be honest and intentional and authentic. And I think that's what they look for. So for me, rather than putting so much pressure on myself, I just say, look, I don't have to give a speech. I get to give a speech. I get to share my experiences with people. That in itself, just having that perspective releases a lot of that undue stress.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just having that different perspective and just talking to yourself and putting it in a different angle. I do a similar thing as well. When I go and speak, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And you know what? It's okay to be nervous. It's okay. I mean, that honestly, it makes you acutely aware of what's going on around you. So it's just like, it's not that uncommon when you sports athletes too, you'll see some of the things that they do pre-game, just like musical artists do the same thing. So it's, statistically, if we polled 100 people and asked them, what are their biggest fears? 85% of them, one of the first 3 fears they have is going to be public speaking. 85%, without any coaching at all. Tell me, what are your top 3 fears? 85% of them are going to say public speaking is going to be one of them. And why is that? Well, it could be shyness. Well, shyness might be a level of insecurity that people feel. They feel like maybe they're not qualified. So, the other side of it too is with these emotions and these feelings, it's you got to believe in yourself. That is the most important thing, is believe that you are capable, believe that you are deserving of what it is that you're about to experience.
How do you get to that point? How do you believe in yourself?
Well, you know what? I think it's through, for me, I grew up youngest of 7 kids. I have an identical twin. And I didn't grow up in a household where I had family that was saying, I love you, and really, really supportive. I didn't have that. It's not that I never felt loved. That was not it. I mean, my mother never told me she loved me once my entire life. Okay. My father told me once when I was 16, and I could tell you the chair that I was sitting in, honestly. Now, with that said, as profound as that sounds, I never once felt like I was not loved. All right. I think that's just how my parents grew up, and they kind of passed that down. That was just not something that was in their genetic makeup. So I didn't have this lifestyle growing up where, everyone gets a ribbon, everyone gets a trophy. Look, you know what? If you're going to perform, if you're going to get a trophy, hopefully you outperformed everyone, right? I mean, you earned it. Not everybody gets one. That's why you get a trophy. So I think through experiencing some wins along the way, I think through those wins comes some level of gratification and props from people. And I think all of that over a period of time starts to give you confidence and starts to build your self-esteem. And I think confidence and self-esteem and those things, I think they run hand in hand. I know for me, I started to play racquetball when I was 13. I was an average athlete most of my life. But when I started playing racquetball when I was 13, and that was one of those sports that for some reason it really suited my build and my athleticism. And I became a touring pro by the time I was 18. So I played that sport at a very, very high level. And my twin brother was the same way. And we were sponsored by the #1 racket manufacturer in the world. We traveled all over the country playing events. And when new health clubs would open up, they would bring us in as guest players. We'd put on an exhibition, a clinic. That was very good for the self-esteem. And honestly, growing up, I was a shy kid. And as I started to gain confidence through sports, I came out of my shell. I'll bet my twin brother would tell you the same thing. So don't underestimate what confidence does to your self-esteem.
Yeah, I have a question. What would you say to that person listening who feels stuck in their life and is allowing their limiting beliefs hold them back from making substantial growth?
That's a great question, and that's a question that I get often when I'm chatting with people about consulting, about either life consulting or business consulting, and I'm amazed at the amount of people that are doing jobs that they absolutely they're not passionate about. So they're in a job that they don't like. They wake up every day. Every day it feels like a grind. They're excited for Friday because they know they have the weekend. So I think my word of advice to people would be, look, first thing, and then this is the practical side of me, make sure, squirrel some money away, okay? You have to have a little bit of cash on the sidelines, because what I'm going to suggest that you do is that you pivot from the job that you're doing and think about what it is that you want, that you're passionate about, okay? The first thing to do to unstick yourself is evaluate where you're spending most of your time. For most of us, we're spending our time at our job. Most of us spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So if you're spending that amount of time doing something that you're not passionate about, that's not a way to live. Especially if you're young, or worse yet, you're in your 30s, your 40s, and you've been doing this job for the last 15 years, and you've never once got up and said, "Man, I'm thankful for my job, and I can't wait to go to work on Monday." So my recommendation to people is, start thinking about, if you had 3 days off and all of your housework is done, all your cleaning and laundry and all that stuff is done, you have 3 days off, what would you do with your time? And start thinking about what are the areas that you gravitate to. And then as you're taking a mental note of what those things are, then think about what is there any line of occupation that you could do that is at least going to put you in that vertical space, whether it's the food and restaurant space, whether it's the travel space, or whatever your jam might be, computer programming. Figure out what space you want to be in, what genre, if you will, position yourself there, and then see what opportunities reside within that area. The reason I tell you to make sure that you have some dry powder on the sideline, that you have some savings, is because you've got to be willing to work for a little bit less money until you establish yourself within that space. And I always tell people, don't chase money. You have to find something that you're passionate about, and then the money will come. But if you're trying to do something that you're not passionate about, you never push yourself to a place of excellence because you're not motivated. So find something you're passionate about, and that way, when you're willing to put in the extra hours and the hard work, it doesn't feel like work because you absolutely love it.
Love it. So changing subjects a little bit, earlier you said you had kids. I was just kind of curious. I'm a father myself. I have 3 little ones, so I like to ask people like yourself, because I can get some knowledge for myself at least. So what do you do, or have you done anything to kind of, I don't know, like maybe kind of open the world of like mental health to your kids, or you talk about like gratitude and stuff? How have you kind of tried to implement that in their lives? Or yeah.
One thing I'll say about my kids is all 3 of my kids, they have beautiful hearts. Okay. They're really beautiful, compassionate people. They're that first. And I think that's very important as to how you show up in life. Generally, when you have that as your foundation, you tend not to be condescending or passive aggressive. You generally speaking, you want well for others. But that's the one side of it. The other piece of it that I try to instill in my kids is to truly try to find something that really lights their fire, and that's hard to do. I mean, my kids, when I became, very, very successful, my kids were in their early teens, and so they lived a very privileged life. They lived in beautiful homes and traveled in, 5-star vacations, and they lived a very, very unique lifestyle. And so you can, if you're not careful, you can inbreed this entitled mentality into your children. So for me, it was very important for me that when my kids turned 16, that they got a job, and they got a job which taught them accountability beyond the accountability that they had to have in our home. So that gave them a level of respect for a job that they had to show up on time with and give an honest day's work. So that was one of the building blocks of trying to develop a well-rounded kids. And then the other side of it is with my kids, though, I think it's important as a parent to let your kids skin their knees a little bit, because that's how we learn. We learn through the times of adversity. I mean, you don't let them get run over by a bus, but you let them skin their knees, and then those are teaching moments, and those are moments when you can sit your child down and not say, "What the hell were you thinking?" That's not the answer. Instead, I know for me, I sit down with them and I say, "I've been there before. I remember," and I'll share a story with them of what I did which had a similar outcome and what I learned from it. So I try to instill in them that, look, when we make mistakes, and we all do, we're all flawed, the key is to learn from them and then try not to repeat them. And so, it's all about that balance and perspective. And, when I was younger, I used to think my father had no clue what the hell was going on. But as I grow, as now being a father, I realized that my father, he was right on point every time. Okay. So I think having perspective, especially when it comes to kids, it's worth its weight in gold. And the other side of parenting is don't limit yourself from being completely vulnerable with your kids and saying, "Look, I did that, and man, I remember the feeling that I had. Maybe you're experiencing the same thing," because you're being honest and you're relatable. And I think that's key to help anyone get through whatever adversity they're going through.
How do you want to be remembered, Peter?
My legacy. I hope it's not money. You know what? I've been able to as I've said, I have an amazing life, right? And for that, I'm forever grateful. But I hope someday when I die, they're not saying, "Man, he was an unbelievable businessman." I hope that they would say things like, he had great vision, he had so much passion, and he chased his passion. And the beautiful part is he didn't run people over along the way, but he pulled people up along the way. I hope that's what they say. I stuck up for the underdog. I'm a bit of a cowboy at heart, so I always fight for the underdog. And, for me, I look at it and I say, I fight for the underdog, which in my opinion, I just try to always do the right thing. I try to always do the right thing. And to me, the right thing is it's very clear when you see something unfolding in front of you, you know what the right thing to do is. It's just that many people, they don't act on it. And that's the rose and the thorn of being a little bit of a cowboy is, sometimes you'll jump in the middle of it.
What do you think prevents people from doing the right thing, even though they know what the right thing is?
Well, courage, right? Courage and confidence that maybe what they think is the right thing may not be the right thing. But, when you know in your heart that what the right thing is, especially when it's morally the right thing to do, especially when someone else is getting harmed, like, for instance, like bullying as an example. Bullying for me is I have zero tolerance for it. And it's not that I was bullied as a kid, but I got a real soft spot for that. And in acts like that, I jump into action fairly quickly. So I don't know where I got that from, to be honest with you. I think I probably got it from my dad. He's a little bit of a cowboy too. But anyway, that's just kind of, and I live every day. I'm no better than anyone else. I get up every day and I just try to put my best foot forward and try to see the best in people and try to contribute in some way, shape, or form.
So what is one crucial ingredient for true happiness, in your opinion?
True happiness. I think to have true happiness with yourself, you have to be content. You need to have content. You need to have some level of peace in who you are as a person, right? You can't, and I think to get there, you have to have true forgiveness. We all make mistakes. I mean, in our lives, we make so many mistakes. And the unfortunate thing is when you make a mistake, you can't undo time. So you say things you don't mean, you do things you wish you hadn't. That is life. And the key from that is everyone does it. Everyone. And you have to forgive yourself and forgive others. Okay? If you were the recipient of someone's bad choice, the most gracious thing you can do is tell that person you forgive them. Okay? And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people. But to say, look, I know you didn't mean it, and I forgive you. And then do that for yourself as well. Because that's where you got to draw the line in the sand and say, I'm going to be different from this point forward. From this point forward, I am going to do my best to not do that. Okay? And I talk about that a fair amount on people that have, their glass tends to be half full. And that stems from attitude. And the attitude is the one thing that we all control. It's a choice that we get to make. None of us are responsible for each other's attitude. So I always tell people, I don't care if you have to, if you've lived your life where your glass is half full, you can change that behavior. And the easiest way to do it as a starting point is to take a Post-it note, in capital letters, write attitude, exclamation point, with a big smile face on it, and literally put one on your vanity, put one on your refrigerator, put one in your car, put one on your office computer, because those are little reminders. When you see those little reminders, that is what keeps you in that cadence of just trying to live life through a positive lens. And you'll be amazed when you do that. You'll be amazed at how lighter the world gets on your shoulders, and how much more, and how people, you wait and see. If you're one of those where your glass is half full, you'll be amazed at the amount of people that over a period of time will say, hey, look, I've noticed a big change in you. What are you doing? What's going on? Do you have a girlfriend? You know, what's going down, right? So it's just those little reminders, and we need it. See? Right there, bro. See how easy that is?
Kyle just showed a picture of a Post-it. It said attitude, the exclamation mark, the smiley face. Do you have them written everywhere, Peter?
I don't, because I tend to be a fairly positive guy. I mean, how you're seeing me now is how I roll throughout the day. I don't get mad very often. I'm passionate, and I always say, don't confuse anger with passion. Okay, so for me, I have a level of excellence. Even when I was running my companies, and I would get and you know, the passion, the emotion would get heightened, and I would say, and I would often I'd say, look, I'm not mad at you guys. Let's say that I'm in my boardroom and I'm talking my divisional department heads, my VPs. And I would tell them, you know, it's heated, right? And I'm emotional. And I would say, guys, understand, I'm not mad here. I just know that we are capable of doing so much more, right? And I would get them in that, just getting that mindset of, look, guys, how do we want to show up every day? And that's leadership. That's getting people to walk on fire for you, to help them see your vision and say, look, we are determined to not show up half-ass. You know, we can control our attitude and we can control our effort. And you know what? When we come up in both of those areas half full, I got an issue with it. So, you know, when I was leading and my employees, I felt like it was my job to mentor them. It was my job to be able to articulate a vision and be passionate around that vision and share it in such a way that it was relatable for all the different personalities within my organization. That is a key component to winning. And I would say winning in business, it's a team sport. So you can't get to the promised land of success, whatever that looks like for you. You can't get there without a great supporting cast. And that is my case. I've built many brands into some of the largest brands in the world. And I've had the absolute privilege of working with some amazing people along the way.
So going back a little bit, I wanted to ask you another question. You talked about forgiveness and people not being able to forgive someone. It reminds me, I had a friend over last night, and not my business to tell the story or anything, but basically, he was talking to me about how he'd been mad at his brother and he hadn't seen him or talked to him in like over a year or something. And I just kind of thought to myself, I've never been so mad at someone where I just completely eliminated him like that. But I imagine I don't even know what he did exactly, but I imagine it's hard to find that forgiveness for that person. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Or what would be your tips for someone who's
Yeah,
having a hard time trying to forgive?
yeah, I haven't personally experienced that kind of anger. 'Cause I'm just not wired that way.
Same.
Yeah, I've had some people before. I've had some people before along the way that have stolen from me along the way. I've had that happen to me several times, and big amounts, 6-figure and 7-figure dollar amounts. So think about that. So these are big numbers, and these are from people that you trusted. Okay. So the first thing that you have, the first emotion that you feel when that's brought to your attention is heartbreak. Okay. You're heartbroken, and then you're angry because you can't believe that somebody who you entrusted and empowered to have access to that, at that level to you, that they completely betrayed you. And so that's the one side of it. But then on the other side of it, after those things subside, and it's perfectly normal to be angry and be frustrated, and to be hurt. That's normal. It's not normal to carry that grudge for months and months. And so for me to have those emotions, it would be literally, a couple of days maybe, and in some cases, a couple of hours. And then I go back to him and say, what happened? I mean, what was it in your life that you felt that you were going to steal from me? What did I not do? What opportunity did I not put in front of you? What's going on in your personal life? You talk to me. And sometimes they're going through a divorce. Sometimes they have some chemical dependency. Sometimes they just have personal issues that are going on. And that's not justifying it, but it helps me get a better understanding of what it is. Okay. And that's good for me. And it's probably a little bit cleansing for them as well. And then from there, we figure out, okay, well, how do we remedy this? How do we make restitution? And then we figure that piece of it out. And in some of those cases, that required they had to do some jail time, because it's a big deal. It's a big offense, and beyond what I can forgive. Okay, it becomes a legal matter, especially when you're dealing with a corporation where it's not just your decision. Okay, but but another one that comes to mind. I was consulting with a woman here about two months ago now. And she was telling me, she was sharing a story with her mother. Her and her mother hadn't spoken for 3 years. And I let her just completely cleanse herself of the emotion of, and she was mad. She's still mad. But I let her go through her story. I didn't interrupt her, and she was done. I said to her, tonight, when we're done with this consult, I want you to call your mother, and I want you to tell you forgive her. And she's going to say, me forgive her? She should be, she was just turning it. My mom, I shouldn't have to be forgiving my mom, or my mom shouldn't have to forgive me. I should be forgiving my mom, that whole dynamic. And I just said, look, at this point in time, it's beyond what your mom did to you, or what you feel you did to your mom. It's beyond that. Let it go. This is your mother. You need to contact your mom. You need to tell her that you're sorry. Take the high road. And just say, hey, Mom, I don't know what happened. I don't know how we can put the pieces back together again, but I know that the start is this call, is this conversation. Let's forget about the past. Let's just start the first day right now, and let's try to put this back together again, because I don't want to live the rest of my life without you. that's a complete open and vulnerable conversation that she has to have with her mother. And I told her it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to feel like that conversation should be coming from your mom, because she's the authoritative one, and she should be the one that takes the high road. But the reality of it is she's not, and she hasn't. So you need to take that high road. And believe it or not, she called me really late that night, and she says, I called my mom. There was a voice message on my phone when I woke up in the morning. She goes, I called my mom, and I have to say thank you so much. They were both ended up in big tears and really cleansing for them. And and I still keep in touch with her today. But that is, for me, the consulting that I do and the coaching that I do. It's moments like that that are so rewarding for me, because I can't imagine living a life without having the ability to talk to my parents, or not be able to say the right thing. Imagine if her mother had passed away, and now she has to relive the rest of her life without making amends on that. It's just so foolish. You just have to swallow your pride and do the right thing. It's like we talked about earlier. Do the right thing. And sometimes it means swallowing your pride and pushing your ego aside, and just being compassionate and saying, look, I don't know how it happened, but it did. And how are we going to fix it moving forward?
I think about this a lot, and it's like the forgiveness. And I know from a logistical perspective, forgiveness is so powerful. I remember I was teaching piano one time. This little 10-year-old is like, hating someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be poisoned. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, scientifically, why is it so so hard to forgive people when it only brings good? Like, forgiving others only brings good.
Right.
So it's like, why is it so hard?
It's ego and pride. I mean, it's pride. It's pride. I mean, forgiving someone, especially when you don't feel like you should be the one saying you're sorry. You see it in relationships all the time. And I mean, how many times have you heard where one person says to the other one, hey, I just want to let you know that I forgive you. And the person says, forgive me? I should be the one forgiving you, right? I mean, so it just, a moment that could have been great ends up just reigniting a flame, okay? And sometimes you have to understand that regardless of how this apology comes out, you have to be able to put it behind you, because living in a dark place of anger or resentment towards someone is just no way to live, right? And let's face it, there are some times where couples are together that it's probably not a good fit. It's probably not a good fit because they're not willing to put in the work, and they haven't really accepted the fact that all of us are flawed. And when you talk about great relationships, great relationships are understanding, it's patience, it's commitment, it's forgiveness, it's compassion, and a lot of times it's taking your pride and ego and putting it aside, which means you have to be vulnerable with each other, which is really hard for some people to be. But without those components in a relationships, I think that without them, I think that you're a little bit exposed. I know personally, as I look at my relationships today versus what I think, the older I get, the more perspective I have as it relates to relationships, and I know that I'm a hell of a lot wiser today as it relates to relationships than I was even 10 years ago.
So wanted to ask you one question we ask all our guests. If you had the ability to send one message to everybody in the world, what would it be?
Oh boy, one message. If you said, hey, 5 messages, one message, I would say that that life is short, and the leveler of our life is that we all get 24 hours in a day, and you don't get any more, you don't get any less, and you don't get any do-overs. So live your life, be really intentional about what you're passionate about. Forgive yourself and forgive others, and really try to contribute to society. don't be a sponge from society. Literally try to contribute and really be a part of it. And then the last piece of it is, when it comes to work, and I hate to bring work into this, but let's face it, 8 hours a day goes into work. And if you sleep 8 hours a day, I mean, it's such a big part of what you do. So, and so many people's life and emotion and attitude is focused around, or it's influenced by what they do for work every day. And I can't stress it enough. Find something that you can be passionate about, so that work component, which is a third of your life, is not wasted.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah, we spend a lot of time sleeping and working.
A third of your life you're working, a third of it. So you think of it, a third of it you're working, another third of it you're sleeping. So you've got 1/3 to really do the things that you want to do. And in that time, you're running kids around, you're doing your laundry, you're doing the things that you do at home. I mean, there's not a lot of free time for you to chase your dreams and do what it is that you want to do. So I just try to say, look, find balance in everything. When you're sleeping, sleep well. When you're working, do something you enjoy. And when you're playing, play in the things that you really love.
Love it. So where can people find you at?
I make it really easy. So I most of my stuff is on my Instagram page, which is Peter_Taunton, TAUNTON, and everything I post there. And from there, it segues into my Facebook and other things. But my Instagram page is, I try to be really either motivational or inspirational, and then some business logic on how to navigate through tough times through business. And that's what I try to do. And then my stories are really on how I roll throughout the day, which is another important component on how somebody that's been blessed with so much, how I can roll through the day and do my best to keep it real.
Thank you. What is your opinion on the Social Ninjas podcast, or of the Social Ninjas podcast?
So my opinion of it, truly, honest answer. This is a really interesting podcast. Every podcast I've done, every single one, has been focused on business and mentoring, and how do I respond to certain situations from you name it, from COVID to business to whatever, right? So I really like a mindset, more of an emotional, deeper discussion about life and emotions and how we position ourselves to have a better attitude in life, doing what we're doing. So I think you guys, it's a great show. It's a really interesting show. I'm glad that I did it, and I would do it again.
Yes, Peter, we love you.
You guys get 5 stars.
Beautiful. And we'll catch all of you next week, unless Kyle has something he wants to say.
No, not really. Just follow Peter's lead with those 5 stars.
There you go, guys. Get up every day, fight the good fight. Yeah, I love it. I love what you guys are doing too, helping people that are probably a little bit lost emotionally, and help center them. I think that's a great and noble venture that you're in.
Thank you. It's definitely a lot.